All right, so we're starting right now. I'm going to start right now, gamers. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to make this a list of, for the most part, on average, what you're going to do. Like, this should not be completely dependent on whether or not you're doing a low stake, like white stake or golden stake. For the most part, there's going to be a few exceptions, and I'll let you know when I do that, which is why I have that bottom tier on here. But for the most part, we're going to go through every single Joker and on a average playthrough what you would want to. You're not going for exactly high score with this one. You're just going to win. You're going for the, round 8, victory, basically. Like the tier 8 victory. You're not going to try to make it to the E's on this with every card, but this is just what you want to get a nice average victory with most decks. Like, because if you start going into specifics on, like, ranking them from every single, deck type and stake type, it's just going to get way too messy from that part. So we're just going to go through and we're going to start just go through, start with these cards, and hopefully go through it, and it's gonna end up pretty good. And hopefully I'm confident in my things by the end of it. We might switch things around as we go along, but we're gonna go. So it looks like these Jokers are right here. They're the same ones, basically. Well, they've changed, because before it was they've changed how this works. We're just gonna go off the newest build. So yeah, let's start, gamers. So Joker 8s. I'm going to do this real quick. Yeah, so I can't remember all the names off the top of my head, but we are going to, I'll try my best to remember most of them. I can remember most of them, but there's a couple that I just could not remember off the top of my head. So let's go back to the beginning. Okay, I'm gonna start this because I'm going to upload this. I usually don't upload stuff, but I do want to do this as an upload. So I'm gonna start my little speech again, and then we'll go. Hello, gamers. Well, here we are. I finally beat every single gold stake deck. So I figured right now is the best time to go through, and we're going to make a tier list of every single card. Now, this won't be the best cards for getting high score. This is going to be, on average, just playing through the game. This shouldn't be completely deck dependent. It shouldn't be stake dependent. For the most part, there's going to be exceptions. But for the most part, this is going to be going through every single card and ranking them on an average playthrough. As in, it shouldn't be that important that you're on, certain decks in order to beat this. So, this should be, it'll be more of a generic one, of course, if you're going to go through a specific deck, like, the Faceless deck, of course, something like Smiley Face is going to be absolutely useless to you, but, there's going to be exceptions, but for the most part, we're going through with this. So let's just start. We're going to have 150 to go through, so it's going to take a while, but it should be fun. So first one up is 8-Ball. Now, if you don't know what 8-Ball does, that's a 1 in 4 chance of making a tarot card when scored. This one, I'm putting it in C tier. Because the issue with this is that it's completely 8 dependent, and for most decks, you're only going to get 4 8s. You can get it going. So I guess I should also, while we're doing this, explain what the tiers mean. S tier is basically you want this almost in every deck, no matter what. For the most part, you will take it. A tier is it's pretty good. It's useful in most applications, maybe not always, but for the most part, it's pretty good. B is it's just a good card, solid. It'll probably make you through a early game fine, but you probably can't build up with it. C is a little bit more niche with it. Like, you know, you're not going to use it every time, but certain spots you can be like, oh, I have a bunch of eights. I've made a bunch of eights. Like, they're popping up. Oh, I can throw on eight ball and it'll work, you know? D is much more niche, where it's like, it's just very hard to get them working. They don't slot in very well. You already, basically, if you already have a build going, you can't, it's hard to pivot around a card like that. Like, you use it because things just happen to perfectly fall into place for you. So, speaking of one that's just good, this one is just good all the time, like most of the time. It is just a solidly good card. The Abstract Joker. Because what makes Abstract Joker so good is that every time you use it, like, it makes bad cards, bad jokers better, especially it's phenomenal early game. Because early game, you're not going to have much of a choice for jokers, you know, you don't have much money. But, you know, you grab a few bad jokers out of a pack, doesn't matter, you have Abstract Joker there to help you. Getting free multipliers for jokers that you're not going to use, which is just great. Acrobat, I believe that's the name of it. I am not a fan of this. I know some people like it a lot. I feel like that ×3 on the end, it's just too niche. It doesn't, for most of the time, the last hand shouldn't be, you shouldn't rely on having to have the last hand for everything. Because that also means you're just throwing good hands away until you get to a hand that you want to play last, which can work, but it's just, you know, there's just so many better cards that work for that. So this is going to be either high D or low C. It can still work well. It still works. But I feel like there's just so many better applications instead of, I don't like waiting for the last hand, I want to say on mine. If you have a deck that's all built around making one good hand, then of course, yeah, just, you have that and you just save it for the end, along with something like Dusk. That's the same thing for Ancient Joker. I'm not a huge fan of it. It can work in certain decks, but it being completely dependent on what card you have for a 1.5 multiplier, where you're just, you know, you might not draw the clubs that you want or the hearts that you want. And of course it's going to be fantastic if you have nothing but one or two types, like suits in your deck, but at that point you're probably already in a good position. I'm just not a fan of it. I feel like it's okay, but it's just not consistent enough for me to be able to want to use it more often. So now, this is just great. Arrowhead is just a good, solid card. In the sense that you know you're always going to have spade. You know, you get this card, you want to build spades around it, you can build spades around it, you have a plan, you can pivot around it if you need to, and it's still good in certain situations without it. Where, this is why I like it more, because it's just more consistently, you're more consistently able to use it than something like the Ancient Joker, where it can vary so much depending on what, you know, on your luck that you get for what suited sides to roll. So yeah, 50 chips. Nothing to scoff at. Chips sometimes can be hard to come by, you know? Sometimes you just need chips. And especially because it's when scored, anything that works off re-triggers is great. Another solid one here. Our good pal, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it creates, it doesn't create anything. I mean, it makes all planet cards and packs free, which is great. I mean, it's just a great one to throw on there. You probably won't have it in your deck by the very end unless you really need it, or like if you're low on money, or if you're running something like the deck that that multiplies off of sorry about that, the Constellation there I'm thinking of, where, you know, that gains multipliers based on how many planet cards you use. So it works good with that, but even outside of that, it just is very solid, because even if you don't like the card that, like the planet that you got off it, like, you know, there's a planet in the shop that you're not going to use, you can buy the planet for free or get it for free, then sell it for an extra $1, which is just nice. It's just great all around to use. Like, it's something that you'll always throw into your deck. You won't probably throw it in near the end for score, but if you have it, you're happy to have it. Banner. I've been getting a lot more use out of Banner lately. I think I might put it into a high B tier. because a lot of the time it is just free chips. You know, if you have 3 discards, that's a free 120 chips for playing right there, which just, it's so nice. Like, it will work in so many situations, because it won't work in every deck, of course. If you're making lower card, like, you know, it works great for a high card deck. It works great for, like, pairs, 2 pairs, even 3 of a kind it can work. And even if you have to discard once or twice, you're still getting a lot of chips off it. And you can get a lot of cards work well with it. Like, well, obviously not Burglar, but, what is it, Mary Andy? The one that gives you extra discards works great off of it. You know, does anything that gives you extra discards for your vouchers works great off it. It's basically free chips for playing the game normally, as long as you don't use a lot of discards. And even if you do use discards, it's still, you know, it'll still give you a few chips here and there, which really do add up. Like, I've been getting a lot more value out of that lately. Like, later on, I've noticed, especially on early game, it's phenomenal, since it's common as well. Since it's common, you can get an early game and just plow through early game with it, or at least really help you through early game. Now, here's one that I feel like is just solid. I always like having King in here. I might not use it all the time, but at the same time, when you have it, when it works extremely well. And especially because it can re-trigger off a few different things as well. Like, you know, you get a red token on there, you get Mime combined with that, it's good. But even if you don't get those, that 1.5 multi, it's basically giving you a free steal card for every single king you have. And most of the time, you want to keep your kings anyway. Like, some things that trigger off low cards aren't as good because the low cards just aren't as valuable. But something like a king, you're usually going to keep in your deck for the most part. So it can work very well. Plus, there's many good ways of creating kings, you know. If you get one of those, you just know you can create extra kings. It just gives you free multipliers. It slots in very well with a lot of decks. It can really help you give you that extra boost. It's not as good early game, but you get that mid game or later, and you're really zooming at that point, potentially. S tier, yeah, that. Oh gosh, why can't I think of the name right now off the top of my head? That is it's just baseball card, yeah. Baseball card, because uncommons, like, you know, every uncommon gives you 1.5 multiplier, which is just insane, because it does it at the end, too, which makes it even better. Because that's after you get all your other multipliers in, all of a sudden you just get these 1.5s rolling in afterwards, depending how you set up your deck, or your jokers. It is a extremely strong card, because especially there's, you know, it works off uncommons, and there's a good amount of uncommons in the deck that are also, you know, there's a lot of uncommons that you get that are just good. And then it also, what it does too, is it makes ones that don't explicitly give you points and have side benefits, it makes those just good as well. Something like the planet, the one that creates planet, that's an uncommon down here. You have this in your deck. This gives you just a 1.5 multi at the end, and along with, you know, extra benefits. So it just boosts other cards in your deck, which is in your, you know, that you're playing with, which just makes it so much better in that aspect. So it can make, you know, you get baseball card, and sometimes you just get uncommons. You throw away, like, commons that are giving you points just because the uncommons are even better. Excuse me. Blackboard is an interesting one because you need to, it's 3 times multi, I believe, for having no hearts or diamonds in your hand at the end, which one of the issues with this is that it also means stone cards as well. You can't have any stone cards in there, and it won't count. So it's a very interesting one, but when you get it to work, it can work very well. But this is one that you kind of have to play around it a little bit. Like, I mean, you can still have some hearts and diamonds in your deck. You just always have to make sure they're played. So they work a lot better when you're playing, like, when you have smaller hand sizes. Large hand, it gets worse with the larger hand size you have, basically. So it's an interesting one. It's just sometimes hard to get working, which is why I put it lower. Because for the most part, it can be very, very good. When you get it working, it's very, very good, but it's sometimes hard to get it. Now, Bloodstone, I'm going between A and B. I think I keep it on high B, because stuff that only works off of one suit are usually pretty good, but it also depends when you get it. Because this is something that if you get late game, it's just sometimes not as good because you just don't have very many hearts at that point, or you're going 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind, and you just the 1.5 multi in there might not. It might be hard to get working, but it can trigger off a lot of things. Like any re-triggers, it works phenomenal with. If you already have a flush build going and you get that, you can try to pivot to hearts on that. It can work. It can really boost your deck, but sometimes, again, it's B because you just can't always get it working. Blue chip. I'm putting this lower on the B. It is just a very okay one. It's like Banner it's like Banner in that way where you just get free chips early game. It doesn't last as long, later game for the most part, unless you have a really huge deck. Works great for high card decks, but even if you're using a lot of cards, discarding a lot, you'll still get some free chips in there. It's just something you don't want to take to late game, but it's a good just boost to have. Blueprint, that is easily an S tier card. Copying the one next to you, oh look at that. Like Blueprint Blueprint baseball card is an insane combo. Blueprint with so many other things are just insane combos. Like just the ability to copy another one directly and position it is so good. And it might be the best card in the game because it's just every card in the game basically. There's no reason basically that you don't want Blueprint unless you have a insanely niche specific deck where you just can't slot it in there. But for the most part, you're always going to take Blueprint when you see it. It's just so good and allows some very, very fun builds as well. And just the amount of stuff it can copy as well. It can copy stuff like DNA on you, which is so good. You get some other ones built up that take a while to build up, and you just copy those. It's just. And the thing is, you can slot it around too. It's not like you have to lock it in a certain slot. You can just between each time you play, you can just move it around to perfectly suit your build. It's so versatile. It's so good. Now, I believe this is Bootstraps. Bootstraps is a neat one, but one of the issues I have with Bootstraps is it really just. I almost want to put this high C. I'll keep it low B for now. Might move it around. The issue with Bootstraps, because it depends on your multiplier that you have. Multiplier depends on the amount of cash you have. It can really vary, but when it works, again, it's one of those things when it works very well for you. You can get good, flat, high multiplier on it. And good flat multis can work very well. It's a very standard card to get. And it does let you plan for the future with it too. You can throw it in and then realize, yep, okay, now I really do have to lock in and start saving my money. So it's good to have in that aspect. And that can be Bootstraps. I think is one of those that I might put in the stake dependent, because on higher stakes it's just very hard sometimes to get that money. I think I might throw Bootstraps in there for the I think it's a decent card. It's just once you get to the higher stakes, you just do not have as much money early on, and you don't make as much throughout. It's hard to get it going. All right, easy. This is called Is this napkin? Sometimes I just I don't remember the exact names. The copy or Brainstorm, yeah. Brainstorm is it's just so good. It's not as good as Blueprint because it only works on the far left one, but the fact that it still copies is just insane. It's just such an insane card to have because it just works so well with so many different things. It's a slightly worse Blueprint, but it's still so good that there's no reason not to use it. Now, Bull, I think, goes up there. Bull is like an advanced version of Banner or Blue Card, where it depends on your money, but I feel like it's a little bit easier to put in instead of being stake dependent because the chips, I feel like the chips are always good to have, where flat multis can vary more depending on the type of deck you have. If you have stuff that goes off re-triggers or not. Where just having chips in your hand, chips are chips. Doesn't matter when they're scored, they're always good to have. So I feel like that slots in just a little bit better than something like Bootstraps. Burglar, A tier. Burglar, because one of the things that it does, other than just for the most part, it gives you more opportunities to form good hands, is that it also gives you more money if you can make good hands early. Because, the amount of money you get after a round's done, part of it depends on how many hands you have left. So that just gives you free money, basically, if you can already make those hands. So it's very, very good to have. And what's also good is that for things like the ante, or the boss ante that prevents you from that locks you into one hand, it actually adds extra hands to it. Yeah, and more triggers for played cards. Yeah. For I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I'm not sure which one you're talking about there, but in chat. But yeah, yeah. Burglar. I guess it allows. Yeah. It just gives you more chances to play cards, basically, while also giving you more money for the most part. Oh yeah, scaling's like that too. Yeah. It's very, very good. I very much like it. I believe it's not a must-have all the time, because there's some circumstances where you do want to get discards, but for the most part, I might put it in S tier. I think I'm going to put it high A tier, actually. All right, and then Burnt Joker. This one is a tough one. Oh yeah, you're right. It can be I didn't forget about that. How my head copied by Blueprint as well. See, Burnt Joker is one that is completely dependent on what type of hands you're building. It is insane for something like pairs and low, something like pairs, something like high card, something like 2-pair, maybe not quite 3 of a kind. But if you're doing something like 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind, flushes, straights, it's just useless for you, because for the most part, you're not going to get that. Or you're not going to be able to play multiple of that, where you want to be able to discard a full one of them. I feel like it's very much dependent on what you have, but it's either boom or bust, basically. You either have it and you're just, every single round you play, you're getting another up on it. You're getting another rank up, tier up on your cards that you're playing, or it's completely useless for you. Which is why I put it in low B. Alright, this is where we're starting to ones that are a little bit more... Yeah, this is one here, the business card. This one, it's alright. The issue with business card, of course, it depends on you playing face cards. So, and it's only 50% chance. So, it's not that great. It's alright. It's very much an okay one. You're usually not going to carry it for very long. You'll get it early on, make a little bit of money off it, then, toss it most likely. Because once you already build up your money early on, you really do not need it further for $2. It's not bad. It's not a bad card. It's not a great card. It's one of those that's very forgettable. That's just kind of there, that can help. Works off retriggers, which is nice. But if you're not retriggering, if you're already retriggering face cards early on, then maybe, you're already in a good spot. It's not going to really carry your deck. It'll just get you a little bit of money early on. And unless you just have everything else already perfectly good for you, and you just need an extra Joker to throw in there, you're not going to keep it around very long. Alright, I'm not sure the order why they did all these in, but next on this list is the legendary, I believe this one, Kanio. S tier. Easily an S tier one. ×1 multi, and then every time it destroys face card, gives an extra ×1. Excuse me. Actually, I put this just below Blueprint right now in here. That means every single time... Excuse me, sorry about that sneeze. But yeah, every single time you get a Hanged Man, that goes from... Most likely you're going from a ×1 to a ×3 multiplier. It's just insane. And you can easily get that up more and more and more. There's so many ways to... You can destroy cards fairly easily, for the most part, destroy cards. Or at least make more... You can even just make more face cards and then destroy them for extra multiplier. Just an insanely good card, which is why it's legendary. Campfire. I was more on this before, but after they nerfed it, it's definitely...
I'm not huge on it. It works good if you have a lot of money or if you're able to make a lot of tarot cards. But for the most part, the fact that you need so much now to make it and that it resets, every tier, you can build up. But at that point, if you have a ton of money where you're already able to buy and sell that many cards, you're probably already in a good enough spot. Oh yeah, and I didn't even think about that. Yeah, the Peridolia makes everything you destroy scale. Yeah, which is insane. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But again, that's. I guess if you already have the thing is, if you already have Conio, you're good. The odds of you getting both are again pretty low. I mean, it is a legendary for a reason, but just in general purpose, it's very good. There's always like specific combos that just go insane. But like it's one of those things where it's like Kanyo makes your deck basically. You get Kanyo, you're in there so hard for the most part. Sometimes you just get very unlucky and you just can't get a Hanged Man or a trading card or anything that can destroy it. But for the most part, you're in there. Now here, I'm a big fan of Card Sharp. I think it's an incredibly good one. The reason that it's not in S is just because it depends what type of deck you have. It can't slot in everywhere that you want it, but for the most part, it can slot in very well. It's like if you have a four of a kind, even three of a kind, straights, flushes, it can depend. Sometimes it's hard to get two or three of those, two of those in your hand or in your while you're playing. But for something like high card pair, two pair, again, depending on three of a kind sometimes, you can play multiple very easily and it goes very well. Just the fact that it's just a 1x multi, then goes to a 3x multi, it's still very good. It works in very many situations. It's a great card. It's just not quite an S tier. It's a high A tier card though. Cartomancer. I'm going to put that in a low... I'm going to put in a high B for Cartomancer, which, again, really, it's great. I think this game's very well balanced. I think in the grand scale of things, a lot of these are going to end up in B, just because this game, I feel, is incredibly well balanced. And so B means its general purpose is pretty good. It's just not good in every situation, which is pretty, that means you're making a pretty good game. Like, I've read the designer of this game put their philosophy for designing cards, made a big... not a huge document, but they made a document on how they want to design cards. And one of the things that they went after is they want to make cards that are generally purpose good and not, something that you're never going to use or are only good in very specific circumstances. So I think they did a fantastic job with that in this game. And Cartomancer is one of those things. It's a free tarot card. It's good. Like, every round you play, you get a free tarot card, which can really help out. It's not a phenomenal, but it's very good. It's great to just throw out in there, but it's one of those things where by the time you get to late game, you're probably not looking to get a ton of tarot cards. And it's still good, though. Alright, Castle. I am a fan of Castle. I think it is probably middle B tier, just for the fact that it can vary a lot between rounds. And the thing is, depending on what you get that round, what it asks for, you just might not want to give up because you already have things in your hand that are good. Like if you have Bloodstone and it asks you to discard hearts, you're really not going to do that, But I would. The Castle works very good on the checker deck. I mean, it's insanely good on the checker deck, and it combines with a few other jokers pretty well, like Smear Joker. It works very well with, but it's not good in every situation. But it's one of those where if you get it early, or if you have a lot of discards in your deck, you can get a ton of chips going on it. It's a very good utility card, but it's one of those you have to build early on. It's not good in every situation, but it's good in enough situations that I'm comfortable putting it probably actually on the lower end of B. Oh yeah, Negative Castle, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, again, I'm saying this if you weren't here before for anyone coming in. This is for like general purpose. This is not trying to be specific, like, every single stake
You know, like, or like you're going for golds compared to white stakes. This is like you're just playing the game normally, going through general purpose, like, you know, because there's some decks where some of these cards, of course, will just never work properly, but that doesn't mean you're going to, you know, I'm not going to rank it low because it doesn't work on one specific deck. Like, you know, King doesn't work on the deck where you don't have any face cards, of course, but that's one deck, you know. I'm not going to rank it down because of that. That is funny, though, to, like, when I first, you know, playing through, and sometimes you just, like, look at a card that you usually like, you know, Joker, and you throw it on, then you just realize as soon as you picked it, that, or bought it, that it just doesn't work for your deck, which is always funny to have, you know. Alright, Cavendish. I mean, 3 times multi, I've never seen Cavendish fail on somebody. There's probably a clip out there of it happening to somebody. It actually is slightly worse now that I feel like they nerfed, really, Gros Michel, or I don't know how it's actually pronounced, I'm not French. But that becoming a 1 and 6 instead of 1 and 4 means you have to hold on to it 50, you know, you're going to hold on to that banana 50% longer, which it's a plus 15 multi, which is good, but sometimes you want that to go extinct so you can get the Cavendish. So I think Gros Michel going from 1 and 4 to 1 and 6 slightly actually nerfs Cavendish a bit. It's hard to get sometimes, but when you get it, like, you usually want it. It's just, I think I'm running it a little bit in lower A just because it's harder to get compared to something like Card Sharp. Alright, C, I really want Sacrificial Dagger to be better. Is it Sacrificial Ritual Dagger? I want the Dagger to be better. But the fact that you need 2 slots for it to go, and it gets nerfed anytime you get the discount cards, like discount vouchers, really makes it hard to use. It just makes it so hard to use because of that. Like, I've tried using it in a lot of spots. It works if you already have something like the egg, I guess. You know, it works in a few spots, but it's a neat card. It's a neat concept, but the problem that it needs 2 for it to work is so... I kind of want to put this in high. I'm going to put it into D. Because you're never going to use it once you're already pretty well in. You want it early so you can build it, but you're not going to have that much money early on to really build it or buy a lot of them. It's just not that good. It really isn't. It's really not very good. If it was somehow building up where it didn't need 2 slots, because the problem is you need 2 slots for it, and then it gets rid of the Joker at the beginning of your hand, so now you're down a Joker the entire round that you're playing, basically. If it did it the opposite way, where if it did it at the end of the round, so you could buy a new Joker and use it, it would be a lot better. I feel like it should go that way, in my opinion. That's my opinion. But I feel like being able to have the card and then have it get destroyed at the end of the round would be a lot more viable for it, because it would let you have that extra Joker the entire time. Because if you use this card, you're always going to be down a Joker. Unless you have Judgment in your hand, which at that point, it's random what you're getting, so why even bother, you know? It's just hurting yourself for such a small benefit. Because ×2 the sale value, again, once you get the sales on your vouchers, where it gets them to 25 and 50% off, then that also affects all your multipliers that you're going to get off that. So it makes it worse to get vouchers, which is not very good. All right, Certificate of Authenticity is an interesting one because it's going to add a lot of cards to your deck that you probably don't want, but depending on the seal you get, it can really make it work. It's good. It's really good for decks where you have very large hands, where throwing an extra card in there is not going to matter, or it could help you. Especially if you have ways of generating tarot cards, so you can just turn those into especially steel cards. It's a great way of generating red steels. It's something where you might try to get a few red tags or purple tags, or even blue tags are very good now.
but you get a few tags on there and then you get rid of it. You don't really want to keep it in your hand forever, basically, in my opinion. You get it, make like 4 or 5 or 6, a few rounds. You play like a few rounds. You generate a few tags, then you get rid of it, and then you just try to add stuff to those tags. So after a while, it's just not going to help you when you already have a deck full of like multiplier cards and glass cards and all these other types of cards, and then you're generating cards without anything on them that just have tags. You're just not going to be, it's not going to be as helpful for you. It's still a good card. It's just something that you're not going to carry with you the entire time. Speaking about that, one free reroll is okay. It's something you throw on early. The issue is your next reroll still becomes $5, so one free reroll is always nice. It's just a little bit nice thing to have. You throw it on there, get a free reroll. It doesn't combo very well with very many cards, but it's just a way for you to, if you don't have much money, to just get a few more rolls and, go for a bit more luck, I guess generate your own luck at that point. Save a little bit of money. It's always funny, though, because I believe it's $4, so if you see it in the shop, it's better to buy it and then get a free reroll and sell it than to go for a reroll itself. So that's usually how I use it. Is I use it for a slightly cheaper reroll once and I sell it again if I don't have enough room. It's one of those where you're just never going to try to make room for it. It's okay. This is by far the worst Legendary Joker. Disabling the boss blind for taking up entire Joker slots, not great. It really isn't. The only good thing about it is that it's worth $10. So you get free $10 if you get it. But it's the one you do not want to see this when you roll for Legendary Jokers. Disabling boss blinds are nice, but at the same time, you want every Joker. Like, one less Joker, there's a few boss blinds that are pretty nasty, but you want to just grab the VHS tape when you have it, so you can try to roll for a different one, basically. And by the time you get it super late, you're probably going to get this later game for most likely. You just don't want to hold on to it. Unless you already have it's only useful if you have a very weak Joker setup that barely makes it without a boss blind, but you only have 4 out of 5 Jokers, because it takes a full Joker slot, so it's just not worth it in the long run to have it. You'd rather just try to fit an actual Joker that's giving you something of value in there. Alright, this is where we're coming to a lot of the early... This is a very early game Joker. I think this is a 2-pair... I can never remember which ones are the... just from the look of it, which ones are the chips. I believe this is a multiplier one. But these are a lot of those... the most generic out of the cards. They're just a small multiplier or a small chip in there for having a certain card. Okay, I believe this is Clever Joker? Yeah, that's Clever Joker. 80 chips for 2-pair. A lot of these are going to be very similar to each other, where you're going to throw them on, you're not going to keep them around for very long. But it's a fine card. It's something to keep around. 80 chips. The reason why it's common, it's early game. Throw it in there, you get rid of it once you find something better. But it works for you. It's okay. Cloud 9 is an interesting one. I've been using Cloud 9 a little bit more when I get it. Just because it's an extra $4 every time, guaranteed, and for the most part, and you can make more 9s. And making more 9s is great if you're going for a 4 of a kind deck, It just helps you out a little bit. It's free money, basically. It's a good early game card, and it can even go pretty hard mid-game, or even close to late game. It's just, again, very dependent on you getting more 9s in your deck. Very much like the 8. Like, both these just depend on you getting a lot of those types in your deck. But this one, I feel like, works a little bit better just for the extra money. It gives you that... It just lets you roll a little bit more for that. Constellation, I'm going to put an S tier. It's 0.1, but
when you get Constellation cards, like planet cards, are so prolific in the game. They're so easy to get. Like, once you see that and have it in your deck, you know you can just start adding those multipliers on. And since they're so cheap as well for the most part, like, you know, you're going to spend $2-3 at most on those. You don't even have to buy the trading cards if you don't want to. Or the packs, I mean, if you don't want to. And you can still have that build up. And plus, you have multiple ways of getting it through tarot cards. So you can get an arcane pack and get the tarot card that gives you 2 planets. So that's an extra +2 multiplier right there. You get them through blue cards. You can get them, of course, through trading card or not trading cards, the booster packs. And you can just get them through normally in the shop. There's a lot of ways to get planets. It's a very, very good card. It just builds up so well. I'm putting it on the low S just because if you get it late game, you're going to skip it. Or even mid game potentially. But if you have a lot of money, it's so good. And even if you don't have a lot of money, you're going to be able, like, almost once a shop to get, like, an extra little bit of boost for it. It's very, very easy to build up. Alright, this is another, like, I'm throwing another common one on there. Which one are you? You're the one that's crafty. Yeah, chips for flush. I believe multipliers ones are slightly better than the chip ones for the most part. Because if you're already playing 5 cards, you're getting a decent amount of chips out of that, so you'd rather have, the multi to go with that. Either way, it's fine. This one, I believe, is 12 for a straight. That is crazy. Yeah, Crazy Joker. I think straights are pretty weak overall. Just because I feel like they're a lot harder to form for the most part compared to something like a flush. It just feels like it's a little bit hard to slot. So it's slightly harder to slot in and get it working. But I might move this. Nah, I'll keep it on C right now. Another one. This one is pretty situational, the credit card. You're going to get it basically either early game or if you're incredibly desperate. You get it early game, you just spend all your money, you sell it, and then you have to build back up. But it's very, very luck dependent. Because you can just get yourself in very bad situations with this. Which, wow, like real life, you know. It's an okay card, but it's definitely not something you're going to use all the time. It can work pretty well with something like Vagabond. But, of course, I'm not, that's only one other card. It doesn't work great in every situation. Now, for this one, it was a delayed gratification. It's an okay card. It's like mid C tier. Mainly because if you're doing like a low card deck, or if it works great with it works great with a few, like, you can get extra discards a few different ways, so that always helps. But if you're doing a deck that you don't want to discard in, it's very, very good. It works well with a decent amount of jokers, but at the same time, if you discard once, it's over. So you really have to be confident in your deck to take it with you. But it's very good early game, but again, it's a common one. Commons are going to be mostly C tier, I think, and that's where I feel like they were designed to be a C tier card. You don't really want to carry commons throughout the entire game unless they really slot in well with you. Which this one is... Was this one Crazy Joker? No, that one. This one is... Devious Joker. Chips for a straight. Again, I feel like the chip ones are worse than the multiplier ones. Just because for the 5 card hands, you're already getting a decent amount of chips in, so you'd rather have the multiplier for them. But there's not much to say about all of these very generic ones. Soda, or pop, if you're in the Midwest. It's diet. I believe it's diet pop, diet soda. I'm Michigan. I'm from Michigan. I have to call it diet pop. It's something that you're just, as long as you, it's very good as long as you don't already have maxed out jokers in your hand. That's the only reason you don't buy it, because you buy it, sell it, and then boom, you get double card, which can work so well. It gives you
especially now since in this latest update, uncommon, rare jokers, and negative jokers are all free with those tags. So you can get 2 free negative jokers, 2 free rare jokers, 2 free uncommon jokers, and even if they're not the best jokers that you give, you can sell them still. So you're going to make your money back off this basically no matter what. And you just need one skip. And sometimes it can really, it can really bail you out from a tight situation with a good skip with some good luck. There's basically the only reason why it's not higher is that you need your slots open. So if you already have jokers that you're pretty happy with, you don't want to sell one of them and then ruin yourself because you needed that joker. DNA, I think, is a potentially pretty good one. It's just one of those where you are giving up a hand and a joker, slot for it. So giving up a hand can be pretty dangerous, but if you copy something really good, then you're in there. Okay. Oh, really? Perkio plus copier is making a ton of onks and selling. Yeah, wow. Yeah, that would be. Oh my god, that's probably how you'd get like 1 trillion negatives then. But yeah, that's a very funny strategy. That's what's so neat about this game is that there's very for the most part most jokers are generally decent, but there's some very niche strategies that you can pull with some of them if you just get lucky that make it very funny. DNA, I really like, or Helix or whatever it's called, double Helix. It's very great if you already have some good cards. Of course, it's insane if you have any hand re-triggers, for the most part, or if you have like a red steel card, red tag steel card, all of a sudden you're copying a red steel card every single time, and that goes insane. If you have a poly card, or you have it works with Blueprint and it works with Brainstorm, so you can make 2 cards of the same type, which is insane. It works very well with a lot of good cards. It's just having to give up a hand for it can hurt sometimes. And it's a very easy trap to fall into if you don't have good cards to copy, but you still want it because you're like, oh, what if I get good cards later on, then I want to have that with you. It's just not worth it sometimes. It's not worth. There's sometimes where you just have to skip it reluctantly, which is why I put it in B, but a high B card. This one's in the lower A, driver's license, because if you already have 16 cards that are in some way buffed, it's very good. It's so good if you already have it, but it's hard to justify getting early on. If you get driver's license early on, you're basically stuck with a useless card until it builds up. But if you already have, it's very good mid to late game. It sucks early game. It's actually useless early game. But that ×3 multiplier goes so well later on that it's worth having. It's it's a different way of kind of the same way Cavendish is, where you're just not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to get it early game most likely and be able to use it. Kind of a different way, like Cavendish, you're not gonna be able to get it early on because you have to get it to expire, and then then you have to find it later. And this one, you're gonna have to build it up first before you get there. But thankfully, there's a lot of good ways of building up those on cards. Any bonus card, any stone card, any multiplier. There's a lot of good ways of just adding those. Okay, this is another one. This is the multiplier for flushes, I believe. That is slightly better because when you have flushes, you're already gonna be up here. When you have flushes, you're already gonna have some points in there, some chips. So getting the extra multiplier is better for the most part. Generally speaking, you're rather a multiplier than chips for the most part, but it can, again, depends if you're, just depends on your build, but I'd say generally a flat multi is better than a flat chips for these lower values. Now, Juggler is 1 extra discard, I believe. It's a good common. Extra discards are always nice because they work with Banner, They work with Burnt Joker. They work with Castle. The extra discards are nice to have. It's just hard to justify a Joker slot for it later on, you know. But early on, it's nice to have. It's a very good utility one. It's just not. You're not going to keep it around forever. Dusk, I'm not a big fan of Dusk. I love Dusk the video game though. One of my favorite one of my favorite shooters of all time. Probably top 3 shooter of all time. But the actual card, I am not huge on. Mainly, it's the same way I'm not as huge on Acrobat. Because having to wait to the very last turn can really hurt you. I have actually, you know what? I use it so little, I might use it I'm going to move to high D. It can work, but re-triggering, there's already better ways of re-triggering stuff where you don't want to have to wait to the final hand, basically. So I'm going to move you here. Having to wait to the final hand to activate your re-trigger just is pretty dangerous. Egg, as much as I like the look of the card, only $3 around. And then it costs like $4, I think, for it as well. So you're not even making money until 2 rounds worth of an egg in your hand. And all it does is make money. And because stuff like Swashbuckler and Sacrificial Dagger are not phenomenal cards, and there's better ways of getting stuff with Swashbuckler as well, you know, for getting your value up in your hand. It's the fact that it only applies to that one card. It's not great. I think Egg needs to make more money, basically, in my opinion, per hand for it to make it worth it. It has to be like $5. I am a erosion believer. I'm an erosion truther. I think it can work very well, but at the same time, it's hard to justify it as anything other than a low B card. I do like erosion though. The multis you get from it can be very, very, very good and can build up very quick, but trying to destroy cards sometimes with that can be a pain. And the flat multi is not always the most amazing thing to have, especially if you're trying to, you know, if you're low on cash, it makes it worse. You know, and it's hard to justify having it sometimes in your hand when you know, it's useless until you start destroying cards, basically. But it's still nice. All right, this one, that is Even Steven. Even Steven and Odd Todd are good. Let me just find. I like Even Steven a little bit more than Odd Todd. You know, I'm gonna move this to high C tier. Just because of the re-triggers, because it re-triggers when scored. So anything that re-triggers those it works very well with. It's just the fact that you're usually not going to be playing a lot of 2s and 6s. 2s with Wee Joker, but especially not very many 6s. 6s and 8s are not the greatest cards. 10s are okay. 4s are just worse 10s. And 2s are basically only good with Wee Joker. So this... Oh, we need to continue the... Oh, I made it through the 1 hour theme. There's just so many things that you'd rather have re-triggered than even cards. But when they do work, they're good. It's a nice solid one to have. Faceless... $5 for discarding 3 face cards. It's okay. It's one of those where you get early on, use it once or twice and get rid of it because it's just not a consistent way of getting money. Because your options are basically to either have a lot of discards or to play your... It works with something like Ride the Bus, I guess. But for the most part, you'd rather have face cards than lower cards. It's just okay. Now, speaking about good cards, Fibonacci is just better Even Stevens. Because it works for aces, which is insane. I'm going to move this to like mid-A. Aces are so good for the most part. Aces are so good. Eights, which are okay. And the thing about 5, 3s, and 2s are those can be triggered with hack. Yes, Stingray. Fibonacci is good. It is good. And the fact that it can work off re-triggers, it just makes it even that much better. And that it's times 8 as well instead of times 4. So it just makes it so good. Plus there's good ways of getting aces. Like, aces are already great to have in your hand. And so the fact that it can re-trigger off a good card, it triggers off a good card to have is great. And that you only need one card for it. You don't need even Steven can work good with the 10-4s, or Wee Joker, but those rely on other jokers, where Fibonacci doesn't have to rely on the other ones. Like a Red Seal Ace card, so good. Or like Fibonacci with glass or something. Anything that works off re-triggers makes it just usually much better. What's this? 4-finger discount? That's a classic Simpsons reference, actually. The thing is, the fact that it only works with straights and flushes just makes that not as good. Because it only works with it's more of a specific one. And then even when it does work, it's still a full Joker slot for one less card, which I feel is just not worth it for the most part in a lot of spots. Even if I am running a flush or a straight build, I feel like, especially with a flush build, it's not that great because you're also losing that card for the points. So if you play 4 for a flush, it's less points, and you still have to waste an entire Joker slot for it. Sorry, I got a little bit of congestion. It's okay. I'm actually going to move it to D tier. That's how not happy I am with it. So we got another D tier card. This one. What is the name of you? I can't remember the name of this, which is how much. This is one of those where I wish it was better. The problem with this card is that it's only +2 per reroll, which is just so bad. Only +2 per reroll is just awful, because if you're rerolling, you already have a ton of money, basically, if you're using that many rerolls. And then if you have something like this card with the rerolls, it's just not worth it. Because you're using 2 slots for a +2 multiplier. And even if you have your reroll, 2 different reroll helpers, vouchers, it's still not very good. Alright, give me half a second. We're going to take a small, it's been about an hour. We're going to take a small break, and then we're going to continue, gamers. Give me just 1 minute. Excuse me. Sorry, I just needed a second to basically blow my nose and cough for a second. All right, I'm good to get going again. All right, the flower pot. I feel like this is just another one that's way too specific, because you have to have one of each suit, which again, it works with wild cards and stuff, but for a lot of times it's just not a very good card, not a very viable card to have. It's way too specific for the bonus you get for it. Actually, I'm going to move it down here. It can work, again, I don't believe it's the worst Joker. I haven't gotten to the worst Joker yet. I'll let you know when I get to it. But it's way too niche of a card for it to work properly. Now, Tarot Joker, I'm going to move up to B. It's a very good card. It's a nice flat multi, and it can build pretty well. It's just something that's nice to have. It can go pretty hard, but at the same time, if you're using like 40 tarot cards in a run, you're probably already in a pretty good spot. I'm gonna move it a little bit lower. It's good. It's just not phenomenal. You know, it's a very solid card to have. It builds off a good amount of things. Like, you're going to use a lot of tarot cards in a run. And one of the things that makes it good is that you don't have to have it in your... You don't actually even have to have it yet for it to work. You can, you know, use a lot of tarot cards and then pick that up later, and it keeps all the tarot... It keeps count of all the tarot cards you've used, which is fantastic. If you had to, like, build it up every time it was used, then it really would not work, but... Since it keeps track of how many tarots you use throughout your run, even if you don't actually have it in your, you know, on you, makes it so much better, which I think moves into a solid B tier. Easy D tier, one of the ones I never like using, the gift card, or I can't remember the name of this, but yeah, it is gift card. $1 of sell value, it's just not very good. $1 for an entire... The only way this ever works if it's negative, basically, because otherwise it's just a wasted slot, in my opinion. $1 to a consumable, it's just not worth it. Like, if it needs to be more value for it to be worth it, especially considering it's an uncommon and $6 on top of it. Yeah, think of yes. Oh yeah, if you have temperance. Yeah, but the problem is that, like, usually if you have a consumable in your hand, you want to spend it when you get it. It's just, yeah, I think it's very weak. Glass Joker is a niche card. We're getting to the point where we're starting to lose some of these. Glass Joker is just too niche of a card for me to use consistently. Just because, you have to already have it and then start breaking your glass. And since it's such a rare card to get sometimes, like, it's a rare card. Is it rare or is it uncommon? I believe it's rare. Because it's a, I'm going to double check just to make sure I'm right about it being a rare card. Oh, I'm thinking of Invisible Joker, aren't I? Whoop. Wrong one. Let me move back here. Yeah, Glass Joker, it's an uncommon. But the issue is you have to have it on you already before you start destroying stuff. So you have to have it, then you have to have Glass Joker. And then, after Glass Joker, you have to start destroying your glasses. So you already have to have glasses on you. Which just makes it that much harder to use, basically. I just can't condone using it, like, picking it up. Because usually, but since it's uncommon, it's not going to be useful. It's hard to get sometimes, and it's not going to be useful until you already have a lot of glasses. And then you have to create more glasses because your glasses are going to have to break. So, I'm going to just do all these at once. I mean, they're going to be equal because they're always just multiplier. What, Gluttonous, Lusty, can't remember the other names of these jokers. Let me just throw these all in at the same spot. They're all just okay. They work off re-triggers, but they're only 3 times multi. They're nice to have early game, basically, and that's it. Because by late game, I mean, they're common for a reason. By late game, you should have better ways of getting multiplier. Because at most, before you get re-triggers, you're only going to get 15 multiplier at most out of that, which you can get so many better ways at that point. It's fine early game. It helps you just a little bit. Even with re-triggers, it's not giving you that much multi on it. It's just not very good. Golden Joker is a high D tier. It's a little bit of money. It's something you're not going to keep, basically. It's just something you're not going to keep for very long because it gives you so little money in the long run. It does not scale with anything on top of that. It's very much a throw on there if you have empty spots card. And if you have anything better, you get rid of it instantly. Speaking about that, the golden ticket as well is it's one of the worst ones in my opinion. Because you have to have gold cards that you play. And it wastes a Joker slot for a little bit of money. but you already have to create the gold cards as well for it. And so if you're doing that, it takes way too much for it to be viable. And on top of that, it's not even that much money in the grand scheme of things. It's just not very good. Now, let's get to a common that is very good. Green Joker is a very, very good card, especially if you get it early on, because you just build multiplier like crazy off of that. Actually, I'm going to move it up to like high A, mid A. Especially for being a common, you get that early on or even mid game, and you can build super high multipliers on that. It goes insane with a lot of jokers as well. Anything that gives you more hands, so especially Burglar. Burglar and Green Joker combined go hard, but even then without those combinations, just by itself, even early game, you can really make that work. You get Green Joker and you get anything that gives chips, and you're easily reaching ante 4 without any issues, basically, for the most part. It's just such a good, consistent card to have on you at all times. Speaking about good, consistent cards, Gross Michelle. Cheap card, 15 times multiplier, flat. It's such a good early game card, and the fact that you're going to get it early game for the most part, and then being able to build up and potentially, after it expires, get a 3 times multiplier, these two combine together extremely well. Even if you don't get Cavendish, just having this by itself is perfectly good. Hack is a card that I wish was better. It's a funny card. It just takes too many specific circumstances for it to work, basically. Because you need to have either Fibonacci or Wee Joker or potentially like the 10-4 card Joker. It's not good by its own. It needs re-triggers to work with. So you always need to get that second, basically. You have to get your first good Joker first, and then if you get Hack to go with it, it's fine. But Hack on its own cannot do anything very well, basically. Because it's the worst of the re-triggers, because you'd rather re-trigger face cards if you get Sock and Buskin. And so Hack only works when you already have boosted low cards. So it's hard to get it. It's something that you do not take early on, basically. If you take it early on, you're throwing, in my opinion. You have to take it once you're already established, which makes it harder to use, basically. Now, something that works without being established, which I'm going to put in high B because it falls off, but Ripped Joker. I'm a big fan of Ripped Joker. That's 20 multi for playing 3 cards. Just insane. You're not going to get that many chips off it for the most part, which is, whatever. I mean, it does hurt. But that 20 multi it works very, very well in so many situations, especially early game. It's a very easy early game carrier. You get that, you are set. You get that, you're going to make a few antes on it, just off those cards alone. It does not carry to late game very well, in my opinion. You can get it to work late game, but it's much harder to get to work late game than others, but it's so good to just carry on early. Now, Hallucination, I'm not a big fan of, because it's okay. But it's one of those cards that doesn't do anything, unless you're buying booster packs. And it's only a 50% chances on that as well. So, it can work. It's a utility card that you have for a little bit. You basically get it. If you have Hallucination, you open a few packs from it, and then you get rid of it. Because on the top of it, you're not opening very many packs in general. 2 at most, which most of the time you're not going to have the money for per round. Which usually is probably going to be 1 per round. So just a 50% chance at like an extra tarot card per round. They have no idea if it's going to be a good or bad tarot card. It's okay. But it's not something that I'm happy to see. It's something that's okay to see. Something that I feel like has become insanely good, that's become easily one of my favorite cards. Hanging Chad, aka Ballot. I think this is one of the best cards in the game. I don't know what, I don't watch that many Balatro players, so I don't know what other people think about it. I think the change to it where it triggers twice instead of once has just made it go insane. Because the thing is, triggering twice is good, but that means that it boosts every other single Joker that is based on re-triggers. And every single card that you have that's boosted as well. Like, you know, that has any sort of special ability on it, basically. So it just makes all of them literally twice as better. Oh, useful as negative? Yeah, again, this is... I might do that sometime later, Dark Terex. My main... I said this at the beginning of this stream, and I'm going to have to say it a few times, of course, because people are going to be coming in and out. This is just kind of a generic one for when you're going to be... When it's going to be... you're just playing... It's not going to be too stake dependent. I'm only going to throw a couple in that stake deck dependent ones. But it should be just general purpose. Like, you play normally and you see it and you take it. There's some that would be very good with negative. I can take a small break and talk about a few of them. I think one of them that becomes very good with negative... yeah, 4 Fingers discount can be good in negative. Egg in negative is funny because it's just free money until you need it. It's basically... Well, it is... I think that's probably, if you made egg negative, like, initially, that'd be funny, because then it actually turns into the nest egg. Gift card can become a lot better. Burnt Joker would become insane. Oh, yeah, no, don't worry about disrupting. It's a good thought process to have. I mean, most of them become better, but some become a lot better, like you're talking about with negative. And some, like, don't change, of course. Like, Blueprint, a lot of the multipliers don't change. Negative actually even makes Baseball Card even better in that sense. Because that just... Baseball Card becomes, like, even better with that. Because, because then that gives you chances of throwing on negatives that just give you more multiplier, which is insane. Like, and it's already such a good card. It's one of the best that actually benefits from negatives. Like, it moves it from S to, like, S++ tier. I guess the one thing is that any flat multi won't benefit as much. But the utility cards would, basically. Let's keep on going, though. Yeah, Ballot, though, since it boosts so many cards. And plus it can combine Blueprint Ballot goes so insane. Or, it makes Brainstorm so much better as well. Because this is one of them where it doesn't matter where it's sitting, basically, in your Joker list. Like, this one can move around and not be affected, unlike, you know, a flat multi would. Like, flat multis can very greatly be affected depending on where it's at. This can move around instead, which, again, it makes so many things so much better. Like, it makes... It's just... I'm not even listing them all, but just for example, it's Bloodstone, Hack, I guess Dusk. It would make better. It would, anyone that based off of specific suits would make better. It makes them better. Fibonacci, it makes a lot better. Like, the list goes on. It just makes so many Jokers so much better. It makes Hiker better. I think Hiker is not as good as I would like it. I'm a fan of Hiker, but the issue with Hiker is that it really depends on what type of deck you're running. I think it's a low... I'm actually going to put it in a low B. It works insane with Ballot. Of course, everything does. And it works insane with retriggers. But it's only a few extra chips, depending on your hands that you're playing. It can wildly vary, I guess, depending on what type of deck you're playing. If you're playing consistent, like I'm only playing, you know, you have aces, you have a lot of aces that you're playing, it makes that better. What's nice about Hiker, too, is that you can play it for a while and then get rid of it for something better, and you keep the benefits of it. It permanently upgrades your cards, which is one of the few things that does anything like that. So it's nice to have, but sometimes it's hard to justify keeping it on for a long time. Hit the Road Jack, I'm going to put on high B tier, just because it depends on you getting either a lot of discards or getting more jacks in your hands. But it can go very well. It's one that I don't want to say it's stake dependent because, again, I'm not going to make a ton of exceptions just for the faceless deck. Though it is very funny to get a deck with a ton of jacks on it, like you get the Spectral card, and you just get lucky, like you know, you get like 8 jacks in your deck all of a sudden from that, and it can work very well. It's a nice one that you can build around, but it can be sometimes hard to work. You always want to get those extra discards on it. And especially at higher stakes when you have less discards, it can make it harder. Is this hologram? Yes, this is hologram. Hologram is a solid A tier card. Mainly because, I mean, it's very easy to add more cards to your deck because for a lot of times you're going to get one of those packs on you, and those booster packs also just contain for the most part, pretty good cards in general. And it builds pretty quickly. And then if you get anything like a Spectral that adds the aces or face cards or number cards, it gives you so much more. And plus, it doesn't go down when you delete it. So you can delete cards that you don't like and then add cards that you do like, and it still just keeps on boosting. It's a very, very good card. Joker, I mean. Very happy with that. Ice Cream, I'm putting it in B because it's 100 free chips. It goes away, but 100 free chips is nothing to scoff at. There's not very many things that give you that many chips that easily, you know. It's free 100 chips, and then you just get rid of it, and it's cheap, which is great. Which I kind of like it because it's melting basically as you're using it. And even then, it's only 5 at a time per hand. So you play a few hands. You get it done with, and then it goes away. Invisible Joker is A. Invisible Joker I almost want to put it in S, but I feel like the issue with it is it's random what it copies. So sometimes it just doesn't copy exactly what you want. But it is very good. It is a very good card, but sometimes it just doesn't work out because you have something that you don't want to get rid of, but you don't want it copied, basically, you know? Like, I don't know, like you don't need like Cartomancer copied as much, basically. If you have Cartomancer, but you don't want to get rid of it, or if you have something like, there's a lot of ones that like you still want to have, but you don't need a copy of it, basically. But for the most part, just getting another card that you already have on you is very good. And then it only needs 2 rounds to pop as well. Alright, good old times... Yeah, good old generic multi on there. You're in D tier. I mean, come on. It's the starter. It's just not... It can't be good. It can't be a good card. It can work, and then you get rid of it, but it's cheap. It's cheap and effective, you know. Marginally effective. Stencil Joker, I'm putting in low B tier. This one, I'd almost put in stake dependent. It works. If you have already a good setup and you throw it on there and get rid of a couple things, it can go very hard. Or when you start getting some negatives, it makes it much better if you can turn some of your good jokers into negatives. But this one is one that relies... Actually, I'm going to put it in C tier, because this one relies a lot more on your other jokers, basically. It relies so much on your other jokers that it's hard to rank this fairly. Because this all depends on if you already have a good setup. Because if you have a bad setup, you're not going to take it, basically. Or if your setup's already really good, then you're not going to take it either. You need, like, a mediocre setup, but you only have, like, 3 out of 5 jokers. It's hard to get it to fit in sometimes. I'm going to actually move it a little lower now that I think about it, but it can still work. All right, another one of you guys. This is the multi with pairs, which is always nice because one of those is, like, getting multi on pairs is, like, getting pairs is pretty easy. So getting multi on them, I'm going to move up a little easier because that's just easy multi on them. Like, if you're already getting a pair, you get a little bit extra multi and you're good. This one is an extra hand, which is one of the better common ones. I'm going to move these again. These two I feel like occupy very similar spots in your mind. Of course, the design on them as well, of course, is, you know, they're very similar in that sense where it's just an extra bonus, but it's hard to justify keeping them in there forever. There's a nice little bonus to have. This I hate. I really do not like this card. I can't think of the name for it. It is called, oh, what is it? It is, I'm sorry, I'm just quick double checking, see if I can remember the name of it. But basically what it does is that every 5 or 6 hands, it gives you an extra 4 times multiplier, which that means that on average, it's not giving you very much of a good multiplier overall. Yeah, loyalty card. It's just every 6 hands you're getting 4 times multi. So you really have to play around it. You really have to play around it. It's worked for me a couple times, but for the most part, I do not like having it on there because you need to get it to start too. It doesn't start already loaded. If it started already loaded, it would make it a little bit better because you get to throw it on there for a round and get rid of it. But since you have to work to get it, it's not consistent. It's just not very good. All right, I can't remember the luchador one, but disabling it, selling it. Yeah, with burglar, but that's so dependent. It's such a niche situation that it can work. And even then, that means you have to throw away cards basically, or you have to play hands that you don't want. And it only works with high hand decks then. You have to play throwaway a lot then for it to get even good. This one, I'm gonna move to low C because you throw it away and forget it, but it's fine. It can bail you out. And then you can just, you know, the problem is you get rid of it and then you're done for the round. But you can buy it and hold on to it and then get rid of it, which is nice. It can save your ass. This one is one that can save your ass, but you're not going to keep it on you forever. You keep it on you until you either really have to get rid of it, or if you notice there's a really, really nasty one. This one is phenomenal if it's negative. This one, once it becomes negative, goes to like S tier. But unless it's, you know, if it's not negative, then it's just wasting space in there. Okay, since Ballot got boosted, I like Lucky Cat a lot more. Well, actually, Ballot got boosted, and Lucky is now 2 instead of 1 that you make per tarot card. So that just really gave Lucky Cat a huge boost to it. So that can, especially if you get Ballot, which Ballot is common, or Hanging Chad. Since Hanging Chad, or aka Ballot's common, and you can get Lucky cards a lot easier now, it really just gave a boost to the Lucky Cat, which makes it so much better, because you can get some really good Lucky Cats going. But again, the reason why it's low A, though, is that it's really lucky dependent, too. You can just get unlucky, or, you know, it's reliant on you getting the other, is reliant greatly on you getting the other boosts in there to work. But once you get that working, it's so good. And even without it, it's still like, I believe, plus 0.25 per one. It's plus 2 or 0.25, I can't remember. But either way, you should be able to trigger a decent amount of lucky cards once you get it. Yeah, Magician. And then you, again, this is, I believe, multi with 2 pair. 2 pairs are fairly easy to get, so I'm moving it up here as well, so it's a nice little boost with it. But again, it's something that you're not going to hold on to forever. Now, Madness is one that you have to put in stake dependent. This is the reason, basically, why I made this tier, because Madness is like S tier or A tier at least on any deck where there's permanent jokers. But it instantly drops in value once you get decks that do not have those. Because then it just destroys anything. But if you can get some permanent jokers that are even somewhat decent, Madness is insane. Like, absolutely insane will win you it. It's very, very good for gold stakes, basically. It's phenomenal for gold stakes. It's phenomenal for, like, any high stake. But it's just not nearly as useful for the low stakes where you don't get those permanent jokers. Because then it's just deleting everything in with you. It's one of the few cards that can vary so much. So that's why I have to move it there. Because this one, it's like low C, maybe D. It's probably D tier until you get to the high stakes. And then it goes to S tier, in my opinion. Alright, postcard is, I'm moving it to low C. It's one of those where you buy it, it's very cheap, you can easily get some money off of it, and then you sell it. It's some free money. It's nothing to write home about. It's funny, for being a postcard, it's nothing to write home about. It's not something I'm a huge fan of. It's some cheap money, get it away. It's very simple card. It works great if you have more discards, but it's just okay. Stone Joker, I am not a big fan of. Mainly because for the most part, stones, the plus 50 chips are nice, but they're just a nice little bonus. You don't really want to create a ton of them and fill your deck with it. Like, a deck filled with Stone Jokers is not going to be that helpful overall unless you're specifically going for a high card deck. And even if you are going for a high card deck, you kind of want stuff that re-triggers a little bit better than potentially a stone. It can work well, but it's definitely not something you want in most decks. And then it just makes decks like 4 of a kind or 5 of a kind or flushes or straights. It's useless for those decks, basically. It's just too many styles that it ruins, basically. Matador is something that I'm putting in low C again. It's kind of like postcard, except for it. Like, I'm actually moving it to D because there's a few boss antes that it doesn't trigger off of, so it just makes it worthless. It's worthless except for on specific antes, boss antes, and it only gives you, it gives you 8. It's a fine, it should be a common card, and it should, you should only want it early game. You do not want it late game at all. It's not very useful. But it can be used. It can be useful for a little bit of quick money and getting rid of it. I believe this is Mary Andy. Mary Andy, 3 discards for only losing 1 hand size is very good. So you're basically getting 15, you're getting plus 15 cards to discard for 3 less cards in your hand. So that's a pretty big swing right there. It is good in most situations. The only reason you wouldn't take it is if you already have a low hand size, or you're doing, I guess it's kind of like the anti-burglar, basically. You don't want both these in your hand. One or the other, basically. But it works. It's very good. I'm a big fan of it. I think getting those extra discards is so good if you're going for any sort of high multiplier deck. If you're going for something like 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind, flush 5, flushes, straights, full houses, anything that requires like 4 or 5 cards in your hand, to be able to just discard and find those cards is so good. Golden Mask. It's just turning stuff into gold cards for the most part. The only reason this is good is that it can work with Vampire, but it's so dependent that it's just not great either. It's so dependent on Vampire, and then even without it, like, you get the gold card, but then you can't play it. Like, you're not going to get until, like, another round. So it's not even useful for the round you're making it in. It's just not very good. And plus, $3 for a gold card, you also have to have it in your hand as well, which makes that even harder to use, basically. It's just, it takes way too much for it to be used, and even when you use it, you're not getting any value out of it other than $3. Just not worth it. Speaking about worthing it though, S tier. Mime is easily, I'm going to put it into low S tier. It's an easily S tier card because doubling anything in your hand makes it so good. Because it doubles gold cards. It doubles blue marks. It doubles steals, which is insane. It works with stuff like Shoot the Moon with Queens. It works with the King here. It works with a lot of very good things already. And basically, turns any steal you have into 2 steals is insane. Just for that alone, it's a very high utility card that can easily carry you on a mediocre deck. Misprint, it's just too random for me to want to use often. And plus, I think the highest multi I've seen on this is like 23, I think is the highest I've seen it. I'm not sure how high it actually goes up to, but it's not very predictable, which of course is part of it, but you don't want unpredictability in, especially later on. It's okay early game. It can help you a little bit early game, but once you get out of early game, you don't want to keep it with you. Mr. Bones, I'm putting in high D tier, just because it will win you the game sometimes if you can't make it, but you know you can. If you find Mr. Bones at the end, it can save you, but other than that, it's a full Joker slot being used for that, which I think is just not very good. Like, a full Joker slot just as insurance is just not great. Of course, if you have negative, it's phenomenal, but it's not worth it just on its own. Mystic Summit is an easy B tier. That's a free it's basically a free 15 multiplier for doing nothing. It's like a cab or Gross Michelle that does not go away. And all you have to do is discard. And you're discarding a lot most of the time anyway. As insanely good early game, it still can work pretty good mid to late game, all things considered, until you find something better. But it just, for the price, how easy it is to find, and the utility it gives, it's a very solid B card. One of my least favorite cards, the Monolith. I think it just does not work very well. The only reason you use Monolith, you have to build it up for one, and two, you have to already have a lot of cards you've already played. I guess you only use it if you're pivoting. I've never gotten it to work very well for me, because usually you're already locked in with a good deck, and then you get Monolith and you don't want to switch it out. It works if you've played a lot of like high cards and you're switching to like a 4-of-a-kind deck, or if you've played a lot of like 3 or 4-of-a-kinds and then you're switching to something like a 5-of-a-kind or flush 5 or flush house sort of thing. But it's not really worth it for the most part. And then if you ever play one card again because you just can't find the deck you need or the cards you need, then it's just over. Not very good. Odd Todd. I am a fan of Odd Todd. I think it's pretty good. Not great. I'm going to move it to B actually because it triggers off aces, and aces are just so much better than 10s, 8s, 6s, and 4s and 2s. Triggering off aces just is what you use Odd Todd for. It's just, I mean, it's good. Now, the Onyx Agate. I'm going to move this up to high B tier. It's kind of the same. It's slightly better Bloodstone because it's not random. Because this is 1 out of 2, which is 50%, which is good. But this, giving guaranteed 7 multi, it's so good on... If you get this and you're on a flush build, you're set. And even if you're not on a flush build, getting that and having it work off free triggers is... You get 2 of them, it's the same as like a Mystic Summit, basically, or a Gross Michelle. So if you have just 2 clubs in your hand, it's very good. And that's before you consider re-triggers. It's a very solid card. It won't win you the game, but it'll help get you there. Now, why can't I think of the name off the top of my head? But this next one is a I love it / hate it. Because it's one of those where getting rid of, having it take an entire slot, Joker slot, just for doubling your odds is funny. It's a very funny card. I wouldn't call it a great card, but it's a funny card. It can work with certain builds, but at the same time, you don't really want to use it a lot, depending on, it's very build required on this one. If you have lucky cards, it's great. If you have glass cards, it's awful. If you have like Bloodstone, it's good, but there's so many that it doesn't affect, basically. It only affects a handful of things. And then it hurts you on boss blinds for like the 2 out of 7 faces, drawn. It goes from 1 out of 7 to 2 out of 7 cards drawn face down. It's just too variable for you to want to use all the time. Paradolia is a solid B tier. I almost want to move it to low A, high B, because there's a lot of things that trigger off it that are very good. But the issue is it can also ruin your run if you get the face cards are face down, or face cards are not able to be used, or disabled, basically. Can't think of it right off the top of my head. It can completely ruin your run and require you to sell it off. Oh, tier list is cut off at the top. Oh. Uh-oh, are we getting to, Oh. Yeah, we're getting to... Oh, I might have to zoom out a little bit, gamers. There we go. That's better. That's better on stream. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to have to move around a bit for this. It's getting too big now. But the issue with this is that there's too many situations where it doesn't work. But when it works, it's very good. Alright, let's move on. Perkio. That's an S tier easily. Making negative consumables is so good. Especially because, like, if you get a consumable that you want, if you get a negative death, then you're just winning. A death every single turn is insane. Like, you find the consumable you want, or, a planet that you want. It's pretty easy to find one of those at least once, and you just start copying that every single time. You're going insane. Not to mention how it can work with the observatory voucher with that is insane, but that's just one specific voucher. But just in general, you're gonna usually find a terror or planet that you want to copy on your deck. So having that in there and just being able to instantly copy that over and over and over will win you it. It's very good to win it. Oh god, copying it too, yeah. Oh yeah, Blueprint on that. Or Blueprint Brainstorm on that is insane. Yeah, because you can also move it around. Does it work with Blueprint Brainstorm? I don't know if I've ever had it, because it is legendary. Oh, copying Spectrals as well, yeah. It's just so good. I might move it up a high. I'm moving it. God, Conio and Perkio are very good. It does, okay. This one is one of those. I'm moving up to S tier. It is... The photograph has become so much... It's become insane now that Ballot's around. Now that Ballot's around, this is ×2 every single time. This combo, just by themselves, can win you a lot of stakes. And then you just throw a few other things on it. Because it's an instant, no matter what, it's guaranteed, ×2, ×4, ×8, basically. It's an instant ×8 to whatever multiplier you already have on there. Not to mention any other stuff that works with it. So if you get something that, like, you get Smiley Face with it. You get Paradolia with it. It's just so many things work so well with these. It's slightly worse. I'm going to put it a little bit lower on S because you need maybe something else to work with it, but that ×2 goes so insane because Ballot is so easy to get, too. It's such an insane combo. This look okay on stream because I did zoom it out because now we're going through so many cards. Popcorn is a solid C. It's like such an average. It's such an average card, but it's so good for what it does. Like Popcorn, just being able to 20 multiplier, boom, there you go. No questions asked. Move on. And then the fact that you can sell it before it gets destroyed for the same, you can just sell it off before it gets destroyed is so good. Like, so it's just easily a great early game carrier, and then you just get rid of it. Great. Raised Fist, I am actually very much appreciated Raised Fist now more and more since I've been using it. So Raised Fist is so good now, I feel. I've been getting it more because it's just a free, like, a lot of times at least, it's a free 20 multiplier. Or even without it, it's a free, like, 14, 16 times multiplier. Because you play, like, if you have, like, anything that's, like, a 3 of a kind or something, you can play your 3 of a kind and then get rid of your 2 lowest cards on it as well. And then just, boom, Raise Fist gives you a free multiplier. It's carried me pretty hard in like, especially early game. And even mid game, it can carry you. Because it triggers when at the end of the scoring session, too. So it triggers before a lot of other things, potentially. So it can be very good in that aspect. Just free multiplier, free easy multiplier, so you don't have to do anything special, you don't have to think about it, and it can give you a times 20 multiplier very easily. It's insane for getting multipliers on lower tier decks like high cards and pairs and 2-pair decks. It's so good at getting those multipliers, where usually you're having a little bit of issue getting those initial multipliers before you copy them with the any of the multipliers. Ramen is an interesting one. Because if you're going with high discard decks, it sucks. But it's a cheap times 2 multiplier without it. It's very easy to throw in there and just get some easy multipliers at the end. The thing is, it goes good because it can just slot into so many different decks. And even if you are doing a decent amount of discarding, you're still going to get some good multiplier off of it before you get rid of it. It's something that you can hold on the entire game, but even if you don't, you're going to at least get some good multipliers on it before you get rid of it, basically. I'm a fan of it. It's not as good as the other multiplying... There has to be a better name for it. Those the ones that multiply your multipliers, that aren't they're not additional multipliers, they're multiplying your multipliers. It's one of the weaker ones, but it's still good. I'd rather have Ramen over the Joker Stencil. Red card, I think it sucks. I think it's bad. Because it's only times 3 multi for skipping a booster pack. You're not going to get very many booster packs. At most, you're going to get times 6 for most times, a multiplier. And that requires you of skipping everything else for it. It's just not that good. The only reason you'd ever use red cards is if you had a lot of double tags and you just wanted to like create a giant create a big multiplier. But even then, it's not adding that much multiplier for skipping. Because there's not like you're gonna get two booster packs per round. So a times 6 multiplier per round is not that great for what it requires you to do. It can work, but it's just there's so many better options at that point. Reserved parking is interesting because I'm putting that in C, but that one can really depend on the size of your hand. If you get a large hand size deck, it's free money. But if you're using something like Stuntman or I guess even Mary Andy or anything, or even if you don't have a large hand to begin with, it's just not very good. But this one can very much vary. It can't slot in as easily, but it's not bad either. Ride the Bus is a solid high B card. Of course, it requires you to not use face cards, but that's very easy to go through, and I'm not going to put it in the deck dependent, but if you get the faceless deck, it's an instant. It's a no-brainer. But even for the most part, the fact that it works so well with aces as well, makes it so good. It's just, you can never, do not use it with Splash. Do not have Splash in your hand or else you are playing with fire with that one, man. For the most part, though, it's a pretty darn good one. Not all situations, but a good amount of situations. Ride the Bus is good. Again, you want to get it early, but since it's common, you're most likely going to find it pretty early anyway. Like, by ante, 4, I would not take it. Ante 3 or under, yeah, it's worth taking. Riff Raff, I think, is... It's a weird one, because it's something that you absolutely take early game, and you do not take it all late game. But early game, it's just so good, because it gives you free money from being able to sell all those jokers that you created. And on top of that, you can actually get some pretty decent common jokers off it. You can get Ballot, you can get Photograph, you can get Gross Michelle off it, you can get... there's some good common ones out there. Green Joker. Ice Cream, Raised Fist, Banner. There's so many good, not great, but there's so many good commons that it can make that it's worth it. So it will save your ass sometimes. And it's one of the only ways that you can get Sacrificial Dagger to even sometimes work for you. Showman, I'm moving down to C because it can go good, but basically if you already have a really good Joker, then you're probably in a decent spot that you don't need to have this guy sitting there wasting space. It's one of those that goes to S tier if it was negative, but since it's not, it can copy some very good stuff, but again, it's wasting a Joker space until you find something, so you have to fish pretty hard for it, but it can work. Again, it's a very strange one. It's one of the stranger Jokers in my opinion. Just because I know this game's luck dependent, but this one is so luck dependent in my opinion, compared to a lot of the others. Rocket is an easy, I'm going to put it slightly low A tier. Rocket is just, especially if you get it early, and even if you don't get it that early, the amount of money that you can get off Rocket can just carry you so hard. Especially early game if you get it. But even in like mid game, considering some of the other ones, even though this one doesn't do anything to actually help you score any chips or multipliers, it still just gives you so many options from the sheer amount of money it generates. Because once you get that rocket going, it goes wild, man. You making like $11 a round, just being able to just buy every single deck, like buying every single trading card, or not trading card, booster packs, being able to just buy and sell stuff, it just helps you. It really does help you so much. It's a very nice one to have, especially, like I said, early game. But even you can sometimes carry it into late game just because it just lets you re-roll so many times for something that you want, which is insane. This is, I think, the weakest of the deck-specific, or the suit-specific cards. Making money is good, but $5 for using only diamonds, you're going to be playing flushes a lot. And if you're not going for a flush build with this, actually, I'm going to move it to high D. If you're not going for a flush diamond build once you get this, you're not getting that much money for using an entire Joker spot for it. Because even with re-triggers, you're most likely only going to get like $2 or $3 per round. But, if you're doing flush diamonds, then congrats, man. But the fact that it works only basically with flush diamonds, where the other ones I think slot in a lot better, like Bloodstone and Agate and Arrowhead just slot into for general purpose so much better than the money does for the diamonds. Runner is one that it's gotten buffed, which makes it better, but I think that straights are just so not good in general. They're so much harder to get working than any other build, in my opinion, that moves it to low C tier. But what makes it not go to D tier is that even if you stop making straights, you still get the chip bonus, which is nice. The chip bonus is so good to have, because sometimes you build a few straights early on. You get runner, you build a few straights early on to help you with like the early game, because making a few straights early game can work with you a lot better. Then you already have you have 50 chips built there, so you can just hold on to a 50 chip card until you need to use it again, basically. And then you can get rid of it if you find something better. It's okay. It's not great, but at least you can use a little bit for utility later on. All right, here we go. Stingray, you're talking about the worst card in the game? Sentence. I hate this card. I hate Sentence. I have had so many decks that I've tried to get it to work, and it's just... The issue is, it's hard to get straight flushes in general. And then after you make the straight flush, the chances of you getting a Spectre card that you actually want are fairly low, because straight flushes are so hard to make, you don't want to get the negative Joker. You don't want to create more cards because you don't want to create like aces or face cards or number cards because those are going to be random suits for the most part, which is going to hurt you the ability to make straight flushes more. It's going to like making a negative because it's going to give you less hand size, which makes it harder as well at that point. It is just not good. It's just not good. Like the amount it takes for you to make one spectral card is just it's too much. Like you're never. It's very rare for you to use a spectral or to use a straight flush deck, basically. Satellite is an interesting one. It's in the same part of my mind as like Cloud9, so I'm going to move it up next to it and see. It can give you more money than Cloud9, but it can also be hard to get going sometimes. It's one that you take mid game, and I've used it late game for a lot of money sometimes. It can be in the general spot that Rocket is, except for Rocket is guaranteed money, where this one can vary so much depending on what planets you found. And of course, you're not going to grab random planets. You're going to grab planets you need unless you get satellite, basically. So it's not like, you're not going to plan on getting satellite for the extra money, basically. Where at least if you have Cloud9 or Rocket, you're going to be, how that's going to work ahead of time, basically. Where satellite's just too random, though it can go pretty hard, but it takes a little bit too much to set up for me to rank it any higher than mid-C. Scary Face is interesting, but 30 chips for face cards. Like the thing is, there's so many good like face retriggers that Scary Face is not worth it that often. It's a good early game card to get a few extra chips in there, but basically you're gonna have better retriggers later on that you're gonna have for face cards, or you're gonna retrigger your face cards that in different ways, or you're gonna get different multipliers that you want on there that it just falls off, basically. You're not going to carry that very hard, in my opinion. I like Scholar. Scholar is... It's a slightly better Odd Todd, in my opinion. Because Odd Todd you're going to use for aces, and this one gives you multiplier and 20 chips, and it works great with retriggers. Aces are just something good to have. I've used Scholar a lot, because it's a very good utility card for any ace build. Or straight build if you're using aces as well, I guess. But it's a very good utility card to have. Because aces are just very... You're going to use aces a lot in this game. Aces and faces are very common stuff to use, so it makes that better. This one... Oh, I can't think of the name. Where you need a club and another suit. That one is high C, because a lot of times it can work, but it also has to score. And the issue is that having to rely on having a club in your hand at all times can make that a little bit hard to use. And the issue is it's only a ×2 multiplier, so I'm actually going to move that lower. For only being a ×2 multiplier for having a club in there, there's going to be better multipliers to find at that point. Like, for a ×2, it's pretty weak. Seltzer is an interesting one because there's a lot of ways to retrigger, but this is just a guaranteed retrigger. But at the same time, since it's only useful in a few situations, like it's useful for a few hands and it goes away, makes it a lot harder to use. Which I mean makes sense because if it was unlimited uses, it would be S tier, of course. But since it's only a handful, you'd rather just have like something like Ballot instead, or any of your other retriggers. Like, it can be useful. It's just something that you're gonna use once. You're gonna use a few times, and you have to get rid of it. Okay, we're gonna reloop the main theme. I'm not big on it. It can save you, but it's not something that you're going to carry around, You have to use it or lose it. So it's very much a committal one to have. Shoot the Moon, I'm going to move up to a low B. Just because it's 13 multiple or plus 13 multiplier. Plus 13 multiplier just for having it sit in your hand is very good, especially because it works with stuff that re-triggers in your hand as well. So having a Steel Queen makes it insanely good. Having a, of course, Mime with that makes it good. But the fact that you can trigger it, it triggers when scored, or triggers when your hand plays, and then you can add the multipliers on top is also very good. It's a good common card. It's one of the better common cards IMO. Of course, I'm not going to say it's deck specific, of course, because some of these, doesn't work with Faceless deck, of course, but for the most part, having those extra queens, very good. The only reason it's not higher is because there's a few situations where having face cards is not very beneficial to you for the boss blinds. The boss antes, I mean. So Shortcut, the issue with Shortcut is that it's a neat concept, but it only works for straights, and straights are hard enough to use, and you still have to have 5 cards for it. And it's not adding anything else to it. It's not giving you any multipliers, it's not giving you any chips. It's just letting you form straights easier, but straights are already not great. They're probably the weakest it's like deck you can really go for, in my opinion. Like it's straights are the hardest to get working properly, is what I'm trying to say with that. So I would not use straights at all. Like I avoid having to use straights unless I absolutely have to, and then when I do, it's hard to justify getting rid of a Joker slot just to make it a little bit easier to make. Okay, you here, another D card. High D, but still, I mean, you're only going to use it 6 times or you're going to use it 4 times at most likely, probably less. You use this to get a free Spectral, and then you get rid of it. And even then, you have to play it as you have to use a hand for it, and you have to make sure it's your first one, and it's only a 6. So it takes, you're sacrificing a decent amount for a Spectral that might not be very good. So I can't with full confidence say it's worth it, basically. We have ads playing, gamers. We're going to take a small break. Taking a small break, gamers. Yeah, we're taking a small break, gamers, and then we will continue because it's the ads. Whoops. But we are almost done. We're getting there, gamers. Which is good because my voice is starting to go a little bit. We're another minute and a half, small break. I'm happy with this list, how it's looking so far, though. It's very fun to talk about all these, because just, looking back at all these different ones, how many of these I've just used overall, and how many that I've realized I just never want to see them, basically. I see them, and I just am not happy to see them. Like, I see them pop up. Doesn't matter if they're rare, uncommon, or common. You just don't want to have them in your hand if you can prevent it. Alright, we're back, gamers. Sorry about that small delay for the ads. Hopefully we're all live again. Sorry about that, but, you know, I have to do that to disable pre-rolls. Alright, we're almost done, though. There's a few more left. Again, any of these common ones we're just putting in here. This is chips with a pair, which, again, it's okay. Okay at best. Smear Joker is interesting. I'm going to move that up to C. It can combine with a few different... I'm going to move it to mid-C. You can combine with a few different cards, but at the same time, by itself, it's just not great. And it can actively be detrimental if you have any boss ante that disables a certain suit. So it can be actually one of the more detrimental ones you get. And the benefits from it can be good, but it's a land of contrasts for that one. So I would say if it can help certain decks, like certain flush decks that are already okay, can make it a lot better, but, you know, can make stuff like Bloodstone better, but at the same time, a lot of times it doesn't affect anything else and it can be actively detrimental. So it's in the C. Smiley is a... move it up to high B. Plus 5 multi for face cards, and then it can be re-triggered. Anything that can be with scored makes it better, and just being able to be used with face cards to go really hard is nice. The thing is, it kind of falls off later on. Like, the 5 multi does not help as much when you're already getting good multipliers from other areas, but it's a good card to have, and it can combine very well when scored with other jokers, but it's definitely not one by itself that makes it insane. But it's always nice to have. It's always nice to see the little smile there. Sock and Buskin, that is a high B card. The only reason I'm not moving it higher is because we basically now have ballot. It's a worse ballot, but I mean, it still works with ballot. But ballot has just kind of made some of these other ones not as important to get anymore. Especially because this is uncommon while ballot is common. All cards is good, all face cards, but it works great if you're having a face card build, you know. It's just, if you're not using face cards that much, it's not as good. I mean, that's very obvious, but it's still good. It's still good to have, but it's not. I'm not as happy to see it as I am for other cards, basically, other jokers. Space Joker, 1 in 4 chance, going to 1 in 2 with you know, with you over here, to upgrade your hand. It's nice to have for high card decks. It's very good to have for high card decks. Not nearly as good for a lot of other decks, though. Like, it's hard to justify it compared to so many other jokers, especially later game. And even early game, you're not usually playing that many hands in general, that the odds of you getting a lot of upgrades are not very high. It's just not that useful overall, I have to say. It's neat to have, it can be very fun, but just 1 out of 4 just makes it not worth it. Maybe 1 out of 3 would make it a little better, but sometimes it's hard playing 4 hands. You know, 1 out of 4 is just not that good. But good, an easy A tier. I'm a big pants fan. Big fan of pants, gamers. Just 2 pairs are incredibly easy to get in this game. And giving +2 multi every single time. And keeping it on you while you do it. Like, just constantly building. So even if you can't get it that specific hand. And just, having it hold on and building up is so good. Because you can get this up so quickly. Like, and easily, too. Unlike something like Red Card, which you can only get +6, most likely at the most, per time, and you're giving up money for it, this could easily get you +4, +6, +8 per round, because 2 pairs usually don't score that high, especially early on. It builds up very quickly. And then you just keep it forever, and you keep building and building and building and building on it. And, like, I've used this so many times to win high-stake decks, because it just builds so easily and consistently, and it's just super easy to use. And then once you're done using 2 pairs, if you get better, like, start switching to different styles, different hand types, you still have your multiplier on you. It's so nice to have. Splash is an interesting one. I'm moving it to low. It's definitely a low B card, but it works and triggers off of a lot of different things, which makes it interesting. But by itself, it's not that great. And it can not work very well with certain decks, especially, of course, Ride the Bus. But if you're going for a high card deck, it can be okay. But if you're going for like anything that requires like straights, flushes, 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind, it's just not nearly as useful. But it can get it up there, and it works well with throwing some cheeky multipliers in where you usually wouldn't get them, like face cards or the agates or any of the suit specific cards. Throwing stuff on that and just getting a little bit extra points off of it can be pretty nice, but it's hard to justify having it, especially late game. Square Joker is another one that I'm going to put in low B. I like Square Joker a lot because a lot of the times you're not playing. It's useless if you're playing flushes or straights, but outside of that, it's very easy to build because you don't have to have all 4 score. You just have to have it 4 cards played, which is pretty simple to do, and then it builds up chips just constantly, even though it's only 4 at a time, but it builds it up a lot. And it can build up to be something pretty darn strong by the end of it. It's just a nice utility to have to throw on there and to build up. And then you can actually, you can have 100. Actually, I can move to high C. It's something that takes a while to build up, but it can work. But it's definitely not something that can slide into everything. And even when it does slide in, it doesn't get that strong compared to some other ones. Steel Joker. That's an easy high B. Sometimes it's hard to get steals, but I mean, one of the reasons why it's high B instead of higher is that you need to already have steals for it to work. So you're not going to buy it when you don't have any steals in your deck, basically. Once you already have steals, which you usually should get steals when you can, then you see that and you buy it when it's available. But you're usually not going to buy it and then hold on to it while waiting to build steals. You can, but since steals are something you usually already want in your deck, it's very useful when it pops up. But it's not always. Stone Joker. Marble. Is this Marble Joker? This is Stone Joker. There's Marble and Stone. But the one that gives you chips when having stones in your hands, in your deck, I mean, it's a good chip bonus. I'm going to move it up to B. Because you usually have a few stones in there, and so it can easily give you some easy chips in your deck, where you can easily get like 100 chips off this, which is pretty good compared to a lot of chip builders. Easy 50, 75, because you're going to have stones at some point in there, and it's fairly easy to add stones because they show up pretty often in standard card packs and in tarot cards as well. It's not something you would usually take and try to build stones. It's something that you usually already see and you just pick up for some ones. Stuntman, though, that's an easy high A tier card. I'm going to actually move it to low S. Stuntman it's free chips. 250 chips is so good, man, for what it does. It makes so many builds pop off super hard. The only ones it doesn't really help are even 5 of a kind. It can help because you can just discard a lot until you get 5 of a kind, and even if you don't, you can at least build up your deck, like the amount of hands in your amount of cards per hand, and it makes it better because you usually at least get some way of getting more cards per hand. So -2 for plus 250 chips is really good, really good. And again, like high card decks, it boosts it. 2 pair, 3 of a kind, even 4 of a kind. It's once you get a few copies of cards in, it's pretty easy to draw for 4 of a kind with that. It's just so good. I am Supernova. I'm a fan of. Supernova is like Green Joker that doesn't. It sometimes can't build as fast, but it also doesn't lose on discards. It's very useful for most decks, though if you're doing 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind, even sometimes flushes and straights, it's not as useful, but it's still pretty good. And for lower card, like, lower tier decks, like especially high card, it's insane. 2 pair, 3 of a kind again. Like those go really hard as well. For most purposes, it's very good, and it's something you get early on, and it just adds free multi early on. It's something that I always like seeing. I might not grab it late game, but it can easily bring you to late game. It's one of the best common cards. The worst card, Superposition. 1 tarot card for making it a straight that uses an ace is awful. Just awful for a tarot card. The amount of shit required to make Superposition work, for all you get is a tarot card. It doesn't give you any additional bonuses, doesn't give you any multipliers, doesn't give you any chips. All it does is give you a fucking tarot card for the amount of shit it makes you do. It's awful. It's just so bad. It combines the worst things about like all your cards. It's hard to use. It doesn't give you anything specifically in terms of getting more points for using it. And the reward you get for using it is shit. It is by far, in my opinion, the worst card in the entire game. Because straights, again, are already hard enough to use. If they change it for flushes, it would still be bad. If they change it just to have an ace in there, like 8 ball, it would make it a little bit better. It'd still not be great. It's just, even if it's negative, it's awful. It's so very rarely useful. And even when it is useful, it's giving you a tarot card, which is just not very good. It's not going to help you make more straights, that often. Swashbuckler is an easy, I'm going to move it to close to low B. Not the lowest B, but lower B. Because it just fits, now that they changed it so it can be put anywhere in your set of jokers and still work, makes it a lot better. Because there's a lot of times where you have some pretty good jokers in there, and then you just throw Swashbuckler for an easy, 15, 20 multiplier potentially. Not even, stuff with, you don't need egg, you don't need a gift card to make it work. It can just work on its own for pretty well. Especially once you start getting, some special jokers, you get your poly jokers, you get your negative jokers in there. You get a legendary in there and it gives you a lot. It's very good. It's very good. It can't work on its own at all, but it can just give you an extra bit of a boost when you need it. Duo, ×2. It's alright. It's good, but for it being rare, for it only giving you ×2, it makes sense because it's any pair, but you're going to find a lot of better multipliers throughout, But for it being a rare, only ×2, which makes sense why it is. It should be uncommon, in my opinion. Maybe make it a little too good, but for it being rare and only getting ×2, it's just hard to justify with it. Where I'm gonna move. Is this the family? The one that's 4 of a kind. One for ×4. That ×4 is so much better than a ×2, and basically it's rare, so. If you get if you're making a ×4 build, of course, ×4, ×5, it's just going to carry you so hard. It's going to give you so much multiplier on top of everything else. I'm going to actually move it to lower A, just because you need to be running a ×4 build to make it work. But even then, it's still very good. Tiki, I do not like you. I think this is a D tier card. For it changing every single round, it being random, what it changes into, it's not very good. For the amount of, it's ×2 multi every time a certain one's played. It can work on re-triggers, but since you don't know what's going to come up with it, it's hard to justify it. Because even if you have a pretty good deck, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get the card you want in there. What one's this? Is this the one this is the one for straights. Straights are inherently not great, and it's ×3. It's a low C. Because it can work if you're running a straight build, but not many people are going to be running straight builds very often. It just doesn't work out. Same with, I think this might be the family. It's doing slightly better, but it's still not great. Because ×2 with flushes. If you're running a flush build, the times 2 is not going to be that great in the grand scheme of things. Because you're probably going to have better cards than this to give you times 2 by the end. Because if you're getting this, since it's rare, for times 2, you're going to have better ways of getting those multipliers in here, you know? Whether you have Cavendish or, you know, you have our driver's license, or hologram's going to get better at that point, or constellation's going to get better at that point. There's much better ways of getting a better than times 2 multiplier at that point for running flushes. Trio, I think, works better because 3 of a kind is pretty easy to get to. And times 3 for 3 of a kind, it's that perfect balance. I actually like it a little bit more than 4 of a kind because 3 of a kinds are easier to get in general. So you're going to get those more often, and times 3 for 3 it's very good. I think 3 of a kinds are one of my favorite decks to run because it's much easier to draw for. You can get multiple 3 of a kinds per round as well, most likely. It's a lot easier to get, and it's still a times 3 multiplier, which is really good at that point. Throwback is a interesting one because for a lot of times you don't want to skip that off because you still want to be able to get your cards, but it can save your ass later on. You get a throwback, and because it holds on to how many times you skipped. It's not like you have to skip and then it builds. If you skipped earlier in the run, I believe it still holds on to it. It remembers how many times you skipped. Yeah, it does. So if you skipped a few times earlier, it can just pop up and just help you at the end of the run. Very good at that in that aspect. The to-do list. It's an interesting one because I'm going to move it up to high C because if you get it early, it can give you a ton of money early game very easily. But then you can also get screwed over for the round. Thank goodness it resets every round now. Because, like, getting straight flushes on there sucks. But if you get something like a flush, or especially 2-pair or pair high card, you need to throw that on there a couple times while you're making your stuff, and you're getting a ton of money early game. It's a great early money builder. You do not use it late game at all. It is a easy early game, make money, throw away card. But good for that. The stock market one. This one will give you $1 billion once you get it rolling. But there's also just the ways of getting the seed money that make that also work. But you can throw that on there and just get some good money. It's a very good mid-game one that you get rid of. You get your money mid-game. You get your cards early game. You get your money built up, and if this shows up mid-game, you take it. You make some more money, and then then you're able to roll for late-game items. And it's good to get. It's good to throw on, but you definitely need to make it work. Trading card, I am a huge trading card fan. I'm going to move this up to high A tier. Trading card, whoops, let me show you. Trading card, being able to be like, all right, I'm going to get rid of all these cards I don't like, and I get money for it. It's so good for that. It's just easy. It's easy to just get rid of shitty cards. You get rid of your like 3s and 5s and 6s and 7s and 4s, and then you're just left with nothing but good cards. Once per round, $3 as well. Very good. This one can take you a lot of places. It can really open up your builds. Really make your builds a lot more viable. My man that gives ×2, what's your name again? For kings and queens, it's very good with re-triggers, but since it's only kings and queens compared to these two, it has to be A tier. It's too specific for it to be anything more than A tier, basically. Though once you get some kings and queens, it's very good. But the thing is, it's so hard to... I mean, it's a legendary, so it doesn't show up very often. So it's sometimes hard to make a build around it. Troubadour. I am not a huge fan of Troubadour because I value having more hands than hand size. I think giving up a full hand for just a little bit of hand size is not worth it. If it was a discard instead, I think it would be better. but the hand size, it's usually not worth it. It's good for like super high scores sometimes, but on its own, like just for general purpose beating stakes, I don't think it's nearly as good. The turtle bean is a better version of troubadour that doesn't last forever. Move you. I'll actually move you to B tier. I like seeing turtle bean. It's very good for making a lot of different hands, basically. It's very good. It just lets you have more hands in general. It's very good for going for 4 of a kind, 3 of a kind builds, and even without it, just having all those extra cards it just gives you more options in general. It's a nice way of giving you more options that's useful, and then you can just sell it when you don't need it anymore. You just make sure you need to sell it before it expires, basically. Vagabond, that's an easy A tier. Vagabond is great. You spend your money, you make more cards per hand too. Like imagine like ever using superposition when Vagabond's around. Just tarot cards constantly. You are swimming in tarot cards when you have Vagabond. In fact, I'm gonna move it to low S. I love Vagabond a lot. The only reason you don't make Vagabond is if you already have a ton of money. But at that point, you're already going to get a ton of tarots anyway, so why not, Vampire, since they nerfed Vampire, it's not nearly as good. I'm moving it to low B tier. It used to be a lot better, but 0.1 now every time makes it works well with Vagabond, but it requires so much more work now that it's hard to justify it. I mean, it works well with Vagabond, it works well with Gold Mask, it works well with a few other ones, but it works well when you have a lot of tarot cards in general, or making stone cards in general, but it's hard to justify it for plus 0.1 multiplier every time now. It's just so much harder to make it work compared to before. It takes so much more effort for it to get results, where something like Constellation is just so much more guaranteed, because you have to score with it too now. Which is the issue. It can't just be in your hand when you play it. You have to score it, which makes it that much more harder to make it work properly. 10-4 radio. I think it's called Radio. It's a solid C, just because 10s and 4s in general are not very good. It's like Scholar, except with 10s and 4s, and not as much works with 10 and 4s compared to stuff that works with Scholar. Because Scholar or Aces work with, stuff like Fibonacci. It works with Odd Todd. And if you get Even Stevens and 10 and Radio, it's just not as good. It's alright. It's common. Wee Joker, I am a fan of. I think it's low A, though. But plus 8 chips every 2 you play, you add up chips really quickly with it. It is a very, very, very solid one to have. I would definitely say that I try to grab it when I see it, but it's not an always pick, but it is a very solid pick to have. Like, on purpose, when I play this game, when I get Hanged Man, I don't get rid of 2s just in case I see Wee Joker. Like, it also works with Hack, but Hack's not very good in general. But it works with Ballot. It makes, Ballot makes Wee Joker better. And plus, being able to turn aces, since I hold on to aces all the time, being able to turn aces into 2s with strength, once I get Wee Joker, is also very good. I've made 2-card builds work very well. It also works very well with Hiker, because all of a sudden it makes your 2s much better in general on top of Wee Joker. It's not the be-all, the end-all, but it's a very fun one to have. It also works with Fibonacci. Like, it works with a lot of... it works with a lot of already good cards, which makes it better. Alright, this is just another one of those common ones. I believe this is chips for 3 of a kind. Like, all these, they're just okay. You get them early game and you're like, okay, I guess I'll make a few of them, then you get rid of them once you realize you're not going to be running a 3-of-a-kind deck. And even if you are running like a 3-of-a-kind, 4-of-a-kind, flush, or not 4-of-a-kind, still 4-of-a-kind ones, but you're running like 2-pair, flush, you're running any of these basic like types of hands, you're usually going to get rid of them once you find something better, but they're fine early game. Which we're going to throw this other one just right up in there. They're all very similar. The multiplier ones, I think this is a multiplier 3 of a kind one. Yeah, because it's red. The red lipstick means they're multiplier ones. That goes up a little bit higher because multipliers on these, especially early game, are a little bit better than chips. Which leaves us with poor York. Alas, poor York. I knew him well. He's pretty good. He's pretty swell. But at the end of the day, I'm going to have to put him in low A. He's gotten a little bit better, but he doesn't build nearly as fast as some of the other ones. He's not as instantly useful as some of the other Jokers you find. So I'm going to have to put him in as some of the other like legendary Jokers. Still very good, though. So I am very happy with this tier list, gamers. Let's see if I can zoom. Okay, this doesn't show up on stream, but I can get my screenshot for it. I will get the screenshot to post on Twitter. There we go. Let me grab this real quick. That was a very fun stream to do because, gamers, if you didn't know, I just yesterday finished off all golds. All golds are now done on, not all gold types. I guess all gold stakes are done on Balatro. So I think if I stream Balatro again, I might try to do some high score runs now, because I haven't done high score runs in a while. I'm not interested in getting all golds on every Joker. That seems like hell. Especially, like, these down here, I'd only use if I found them on negatives. But I'm very happy with this list. This was very fun to do. It's a nice cathartic. It's a nice way to finishing this off after a long 200 plus hours, like 250 hours I think I've played into Balatro so far. Some of it was definitely like AFK, 268 hours, but there's definitely parts of it that were AFK where I accidentally left it on while doing something else, you know? But I have to say I had a lot of fun making this list. I have been talking now for a 2.5 hours straight. I'm going to go throw this on, I'm going to highlight this and probably throw it on YouTube. I usually don't do that, but thought this would be a fun thing to do, gamers. So thank you everyone for watching. Thank you if you're coming in from the YouTubers, you know, any tuber watchers on here, which I don't have very many in general, but hey, who knows? Some might show up. I do appreciate everyone stopping by, though. So let's go find somebody to raid, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Tomorrow, gamers,